and he states that he doesn't speak to me anymore because my wife has forbidden me to talk to him.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we dive into the electrifying, tumultuous, and unforgettable life of one of rock's most legendary drummers. This is the story of the incredible Ginger Baker. Growing up in post-war London, young Ginger found solace in music. And now let us learn about hidden corners about Ginger Baker that have never been published. Let's get started. Peter Edward Ginger Baker was born on August 19, 1939 in Lewisham, London. Known for his fiery red hair, explosive temper, and unparalleled drumming skills, Ginger Baker was a force of nature both on and off the stage. Few people know that she was born into a family with a meaningful name. Ruby Streatfeild, who worked as a tobacconist, and Frederick Baker, who was a bricklayer and a lance corporal in the Royal Corps of Signals. The two individuals in question were the individuals in question. The Dodecanese campaign, which was a part of World War II, took place in 1943 and Frederick Baker was killed in it. Frederick Baker and his wife were the inspirations for Ginger's parents' names. Following the completion of his schooling at Pope Street School, he went on to attend a number of other institutions, including Shooter's Hill Grammar School and Pope Street School, where he was one of the most successful football players to ever attend. Ginger was a nickname that was given to him because of the color of his hair, which was a bright red. Several years later, he became a member of the Air Training Corps at Woolwich, where he was assigned to Squadron 56 following his enrollment. A brief period of time was spent by him serving in that position. In the beginning of her existence, Ginger did not have a definitive notion of where she wanted to go. She ultimately discovered that she had a desire for professional cycling, which she pursued until she was involved in an accident with a taxi in London. When she was in London, she was involved in the accident. When Ginger was still in school, he initially became interested in jazz art. This passion continues to this day. He would frequently tap out rhythms on his desk, borrowing inspiration from big band drummers like Jack Parnell, Ronnie Verrill, and Phil Seaman, who were instructors from whom you would ultimately receive instruction. He would do this on a daily basis. In spite of the fact that he had begun his career as a musician by playing the trumpet, he went to a party where a band was playing when he was 15 years old. That was the first time he had ever attended a party. After recalling him playing the drums at his desk with his students, he was motivated to give the drums a shot. His friends had recalled him playing the drums. He soon came to the realization that he wanted to be a professional drummer, despite the fact that he lacked skill. The other members of the band were happy with him, and he gradually came to this realization. Following the acquisition of his first drum kit, which he purchased for £3, he started playing the drums on a part-time routine. He started engaging in drumming events in addition to working as a sign writer and at an advertising company. He also worked at the firm. In the beginning of his career as a professional musician, he was a member of Hugh Rainey's All-Stars, which would eventually evolve into the Storyville Jazz Band. During the time when the event took place, he was just 16 years old. Because he was offered this job, which paid him £12 a week, he made the decision to quit his day job. This was the driving force behind his decision. Ginger was a member of a number of English traditional jazz bands from the later half of the 1950s to the early 1960s. These ensembles were performed in England. During that time, these ensembles were active in their activities. These groups included ones that were headed by musicians such as Terry Lightfoot, Acker Bilk, and Ken Oldham, amongst others. Nevertheless, his ardent convictions and combative temperament occasionally caused him to grow annoyed with his fellow band members and the constraints imposed by the musical style. This was a result of the fact that he was a member of the band. The method in which he communicated his thoughts was really forthright. Additionally, the time that he spent in London's jazz clubs was the impetus for the development of a heroin addiction, which would continue to be a difficulty for him far into the 1980s. This addiction affected him in a significant way. As a direct result of the proposition that Watts made, Ginger took over as the primary vocalist of Alexis Korner's Blues Incorporated in 1962. Charlie Watts had previously held that position. Ginger was given the opportunity to repay the favor by putting Watts' name forward to Brian Jones for the Rolling Stones performance. This opportunity came about as a result of the passage of time that had elapsed. While Ginger was working for Blues Incorporated, he had the opportunity to work with a number of artists, including Jack Bruce, a bassist, and Graham Bond, a saxophone and organist. Both of these performers were essential in Ginger's musical explorations. Each of these individuals would have a big influence on Ginger's professional life, and they would all have an impact. In 1963, the three members of the band came to the conclusion that they would leave Blues Incorporated in order to establish the Graham Bond organization. Despite the fact that their relationship with Bruce was reportedly in a state of instability, this choice was taken regardless of the circumstances. Ginger's emergence into a genuine jazz rock fusion drummer was eventually a direct result of the aggressive drumming technique that he adopted during this time period. It was at this time period that Ginger's method was established. Eric Clapton, a British guitarist who occasionally performed with the Graham Bond organization, was able to thoroughly captivate Ginger with his performances. Ginger was absolutely captivated by his performances. The concerts that Clapton gave left Ginger feeling ecstatic. Ginger got the opportunity to see Clapton perform with John Mayall's Blues Breakers in 1966, which spurred the notion that she should investigate joining a new experimental band. Ginger felt that she should try joining a band that was more experimental. She was motivated to think of these concepts after coming across Clapton's performance, which she had witnessed. Clapton gave his approval to the conditions of the deal on the condition that Jack Bruce would come on board as a member of the band once the arrangement constructed. Within the band, Bruce would be the one to take on the responsibilities of both bassist and vocalist. In June of 1966, the three individuals came together to form Cream, which would go on to become the first rock supergroup. Cream was formed by the same three individuals. The three individuals concocted a substance known as Cream. Ginger favored and concurred with this alternative, which was one of the options. Additionally, Robert Stigwood, who was the manager of Cream, was the individual who was responsible for bringing together the band. In the beginning, he was the one who assembled the band. Although Ginger played drums, Clapton played lead guitar, and Bruce played bass and lead vocals, Ginger was the leader of the band. Bruce performed bass and lead vocals. Ginger, who was also a member of the band, was a member of the band. When they were invited to perform at the Windsor Jazz and Blues Festival, which was held in England in July of 1966, they were given the opportunity to perform as the headliner. This marks the beginning of their remarkable journey to fame in the sphere of public opinion. It was the beginning of their spectacular rise to fame, which began with a few successful concerts in less prominent venues. This was the beginning of their meteoric rise to recognition. This marked the commencement of their spectacular ascent to prominence. Cream's first song, which was released in 1966, contained jazzy pop music that was light and airy. The track also included Cream's signature sound. However, in contrast to the typical sound that Cream was famous for, this song had a musical style that was completely unique. It was in December of the same year that the band's first album, titled Fresh Cream, was formally released. Some of the songs that are featured on the album are NSU I'm So Glad and Spoonful, to name just a few of the songs that are included on the album. It is a collection of songs that are incredibly powerful. Furthermore, the record was able to effectively highlight the band's distinctive sound in the appropriate manner. When it came to the United Kingdom, the album was able to make its way all the way up to the 6th slot on the chart. The band released 2 more albums during the course of their career, each of which featured original tunes written by the band members. When compared to the live version of Wheels of Fire, which was released in 1967 and reached number 1 on the charts in the United States, which demonstrated the band's propensity to indulge in self-indulgence during live performances, the album Disraeli Gears, which was released in 1967, displayed the band's exceptional musical and creative abilities. Wheels of Fire was a film that was very successful in the United States during its release. It was the intense animosity that existed between Ginger and Bruce at the time that were a contributing factor in the dissolution of Cream in November of 1968. In the process that immediately led to the breakup of Cream, this was one of the key aspects that included. The 4th album that was released was titled Goodbye, and it was the 4th album that was released over the entire period. February of 1969 was the month when the book was released to the public. As a result of the fact that it was a very brief album that had a skewed mix of live and studio music, it was able to achieve the highest position on any album charts in the United Kingdom. Cream is projected to have been successful in selling a total of 15 million copies of its 4 albums over the relatively short period of time that they were engaged in the music industry. As a result of the split of Cream, Ginger joined Blind Faith, a new band that also featured Eric Clapton, Steve Winwood, and Rick Gresh on bass. Blind Faith was a collaboration between Ginger and the band. Ginger joined Blind Faith, a new band, almost immediately after Cream was dissolved. Blind Faith was another band that Ginger joined. Following the conclusion of a tour in the United States in October, the band decided to part ways, despite the fact that their self-titled album from 1969 was a huge success, reaching #1 on the charts in both the United States and the United Kingdom and selling 500,000 copies in a span of less than a month. In spite of the fact that the record had been made accessible to the general public for the very first time in 1969, this event, Ginger was left feeling unhappy as a result of Clapton's decision to leave the band and join Derek and the Dominoes. As a consequence of this, Ginger took the decision to form his own band. The choice that Ginger made led to the formation of his very own band because of the consequences of his decision. Winwood and Gresh were needed to take part in the new jazz-rock fusion project that he was working on. This was done so that they could meet their duties. Ginger Baker's Air Force was the name given to the project. Graham Bonthrow formed the Hammond organ and saxophone, Denny Lane played the guitar, and there were 3 brass players on the roster. This brought the total number of members in the band to 11. Not only did the lineup include drummers Phil Seaman and Remy Kabaka, but it also had 3 brass musicians in addition to the 2 that were stated before. There is a wide range of musical styles that have been combined into the music in a way that is not only innovative but also engaging and delightful. These styles include blues, R&B, jazz, and African rhythms. Ginger, who was always upset with the fact that Bruce and Pete Brown, the lyricist, had earned the most of Cream's songwriting money, made certain that he had a significant involvement in the composition credits for Air Force and even for his future undertakings. Ginger's dissatisfaction stemmed from the fact that Pete Brown had received the majority of the money. Ginger's mistrust of Pete Brown stemmed from the fact that he was the lyricist for the song. The band's first album, which was a live double LP that was recorded at the Royal Albert Hall in January of 1970, had contributions from both Winwood and Gresh. The album consisted of 2 live tracks. The CD was published before the band's first public performance. The live performance of the band was the one that was included on the release of the CD. In light of this, they came to the conclusion that it would be best for them to leave the band and instead reunite with Traffic. The absence of Winwood and Clapton in Ginger's performance, on the other hand, made it difficult for her to attract listeners. This was owing to the fact that they were not featured in her performance. During their tour in the United States Air Force, which now has 9 members, struggled to sell tickets and attract good coverage from the radio. This was a challenge for the organization. Although it was their second album, Ginger Baker's Air Force I, which was released in December 1970, was not able to capture the same spontaneous energy as their first effort at recording an album. This was despite the fact that it was their second consecutive album. In spite of the fact that it was their second album, this was the final result. It was as a result of this that the record and the band were progressively forgotten about over the course of time. This was a direct result of the circumstances that were there. Ginger Baker laid the groundwork for the Ginger Baker Drum Choir after she had completed her tour of service in the United States Air Force. PRAPO Records released a single in 1971, despite the fact that the choir was only active for a short period of time. The record was released without any more information. There was a call and response vocal arrangement that was included on the CD, in addition to a percussion ensemble that had 3 individuals performing together. Each of these components was incorporated into the record in some way. This album had 3 tracks: We Are Here, A Tunday, and Sunday Part 2. These 3 songs were included on the CD. The title track was titled Sunday. Ginger embarked on a journey across the Sahara Desert in November 1971 with the purpose of creating a recording studio in Lagos, Nigeria. Her destination was anticipated to be in Nigeria. Despite her best efforts, she was not successful in her mission. It was in 1971 that the album was made accessible to the general public for first time. The voyage that Tony Palmer accomplished was documented in the documentary film Ginger Baker in Africa, which was produced by Tony Palmer of Ginger Baker Entertainment. The film was titled Ginger Baker in Africa. In addition to being the producer, Tony Palmer was also the director of the film. When it first opened its doors in January 1973, Barracuda Arc Studios did so in spite of the difficulties it encountered first. The recording studio continued to provide its services to performers from the Western region, as well as those from the surrounding area during the whole decade of the 1970s. The studio was used to record Paul McCartney and Wings, and Baker used a tin can that was filled with gravel to generate percussion for Picasso's last words to accompany the song. Additionally, the venue was utilized for the recording of the song Wings. Fela Kuti was absent from the recording sessions that took place in 1971, and Ginger Kuti covered for him during those sessions. This ultimately led to the development of the album Live, which included Fela Kuti as a featured performer on the album. As an additional point of interest, Ginger collaborated with Fela on the album Stradivarius, which was initially made available to the general audience in the year 1972. Under the identity Bobby Gass for Bobby Tench, he was given credit for the record that they were working on at the time. This was done in order to protect his creative integrity. Stradivarius was one of the songs that was included in the compilation album Do What You Like, which was published in 1998. The album was created by a collection of artists. After some time had passed, Stradivarius was added to the collection. Ginger Gervitz, together with her brothers Paul and Adrian Gervitz, established the Baker-Gervitz Army in 1974. It was them who took the initiative to form the organization, and they were the ones who did it. After the release of 3 albums, the band went on to perform widely across England and Europe, in addition to engaging in a significant amount of touring for the duration of their career. The dissolution of the band took place not long after the terrible death of the band's manager Bill Feehily, which happened in 1976 as a result of an airplane accident. The occurrence of this behavior occurred in a pretty short amount of time after his demise. Ginger was employed on an olive farm in Tuscany, Italy for a considerable amount of time in the early 1980s. The number of musical activities that she participated in during this time period was not very extensive. This became a possibility as a result of the fact that the Lagos Studio Initiative did not achieve the desired results. He was a member of the band Hawkwind during the years 1980 and 1981, and it was at this time that he contributed to the album Levitation. His contributions were made during this time period as a result of his time spent with Hawkwind. Live recordings and demos were eventually included into the albums that were produced by the band and published in the late 1980s. These albums were distributed in the United States. These albums were released in the United States of America, which was the country that issued them. Ginger was a session musician that collaborated with producer Bill Laswell on the album Horses and Trees, which was published by Public Image Ltd. in the year 1985. On the album, Ginger was also a cooperative participant with Laswell. Throughout the course of the year 1985, each of these responsibilities were completed at separate times in time. Ginger moved to Los Angeles in the late 1980s with the purpose of pursuing a career in the acting profession. Her move was motivated by the desire to pursue a greater career. The city of Los Angeles is where she is now located at the moment. In spite of the fact that he was considered for the character of the homeless man in the film UHF, which was directed by Weird Al Yankovic in 1989, he ultimately did not end up being selected for the Jade. 1989 was the year when the movie was made available to the public. Thereafter, he appeared on the television series Nasty Boys, which debuted in the year 1990, playing the role of Ginger that he had previously performed. Within the context of the series, his performance could be observed in the year 1990. In 1992, Ginger became a member of the hard rock band Masters of Reality and made a contribution to the album Sunrise on the Suffer Bus that they released. During the time when the band was being founded, Ginger was a member of the band, along with the bassist Googe and the vocalist-guitarist Chris Goss. Not only that, but Ginger was a member of the band at that particular time period. The CD that was made accessible to the general public may contain his contributions, which you may locate there. The next year, Ginger, Jack Bruce, and Gary Moore collaborated to form Bruce Baker Moore, better known as BBM. This was the year that followed the previous one, Within the next year, this group was established. BBM was the name given to these scary trio of contemporaries. Their rock album, which was released in 1994 and was named around the next Dream, was released to the public. The songs on this album were influenced by blues music, and they demonstrated the band's ability to work together beautifully. The CD was a straightforward demonstration of their capabilities when they collaborated on the project. Ginger lived in Parker, Colorado, while she was a resident from 1993 to 1999. During that time, he was a member of the Salisbury Equestrian Park, and it was there that he participated in the sport of polo to the maximum extent that was possible. In addition, he hosted concerts and jam sessions at the venue on the weekends, which was an additional component of his presentations. He would eventually be compelled to deal with immigration difficulties in the United States as a result of his previous drug use, which would finally lead to him selling his property and moving to South Africa in the year 1999. This circumstance would ultimately lead to his leaving the United States. This was all because he had a history of drug usage, which was the cause of all of this. The Ginger Baker Trio was established in 1994 by Ginger Baker, Charlie Hayden, who played bass, and Bill Frisell, who played guitar. Ginger Baker was the lead vocalist for the group. It was the beginning of yet another chapter in his extensive musical journey, which had previously been distinguished by a variety of musical experiences. This incident marked the beginning of yet another chapter. One more musical event was the beginning of this chapter, which marked the beginning of this chapter. On May 3, 2005, Ginger reunited with Eric Clapton and Jack Bruce for a series of 4 concerts that were held at Madison Square Garden and the Royal Albert Hall. These events were held in different locations. All over the course of the year, the events were held in succession. Furthermore, Ginger collaborated with Jack Bruce for the length of their performances when they were both performing. During the months of May 2nd, 3, 5, and 6, 2005, concerts were staged at Royal Albert Hall in London. These concerts were captured on camera and made available to the general public. In 2009, Bruce penned an essay for Rolling Stone in which he discussed his relationship with Ginger. The piece was published in 2009. The story was about his relationship with Ginger because it was the focus of the narrative. He referred to it as a knife-edge thing, and he also claimed that they were able to live together and cohabit peacefully on different continents as a result of their capacity to live together. Additionally, he asserted that they had a positive relationship with one another. During the year 2008, Ginger claimed that Lindy Vernocco, a member of the bank's staff, had robbed him of around $60,000. There was a public disclosure of Ginger's charges. In his charges, he claimed that Noko, whom he had engaged as a personal assistant, had exploited her position to get access to his bank information and make withdrawals without his consent. He alleged that she had done this by using her position. However, she continued to claim that the money was a gift and that they had a wonderful connection with one another. She also stated that they had a terrific relationship. Additionally, she said that they were rather near to one another. Despite the fact that Baker was aware of a specific scar, she continued to deny the fact that she had been harmed. This refusal to face the truth of the situation continues to this day. He was of the opinion that the penalty that was handed down to Noko was a complete and total fabrication. Baker held this viewpoint of his own. Noko was found guilty of fraud in October of 2010, and as a result of the conviction, she was sentenced 3 years of community service duty. This sentence was handed down as a consequence of the conviction. The year 2009 was the year when Baker's autobiography, which was given the title Hellraiser, was made available to the general public for the first time. The documentary film Beware of Mr. Baker, which was directed by Jay Bolger and had its debut at South by Southwest in Texas in 2012, was not only the recipient of the prize, but it was also the recipient of the Grand Jury Award for Best Documentary Feature. This award was presented to the film in addition to the prize. The film was honored with this prize by the grand jury before it was awarded. The first time that it was broadcast in the United Kingdom occurred on July 7th, 2015, when it was broadcast on BBC One. This was the first time that it was broadcast in that country. In 2013 and 2014, he went on tour with the Ginger Baker Jazz Confusion, which was a quartet consisting of saxophonist Alfred P. Wee Ellis, bassist Alec Dankworth, and percussionist Abies Dudu. He was a member of the group. Individually, he was a part of the group. In his own right, he was a member of the group together. I don't understand why Ginger's album, which he published in 2014 after signing a contract with Multima Music, was even taken into consideration in the first place. The total number of children that Ginger has is 3, and she has been married 4 times in her personal life. She was also a mother to 3 children. In addition to that, she presented the world with 3 offspring. He and his first wife, Liz Finch, became parents for the first time in 1960 when they welcomed their daughter Jeanette Karen into the world. This marked the beginning of their fatherhood. As a consequence of his union with Liz Finch, Jeanette Karen came into its existence. The year 1969 saw the birth of both of his children, Kofi Streetfield Baker, his son, and Leda, his second daughter, who was born in 1968. Both of his children were born in the same year. In terms of gender, both of his daughters were of the female variety. According to the Ghanaian musician Kofi Ganaba, who served as the source of inspiration for the name of the neighborhood bakery, Kofi Streetfield Bakery was named after him. In order to follow in his father's footsteps, he decided to pursue a career as a drummer and obtained experience performing alongside artists such as Glenn Hughes and Uli John Roth. In his latter years, Kofi did the same thing that his father had done, following in his father's footsteps. Ginger Baker tied the knot with Sarah Baker in 1983, and the couple remained married until August of 1984. Ginger's second marriage took place at this time. This particular marriage was her second marriage. It was the next year, in 1990, that he tied the knot with Karen Lukes, and it was not until 1999 that the pair eventually divorced. The couple were married till the year 1999. Through his fourth and final marriage, which began in 2010 and continued until his passing in 2019, he had been married 4 times. The year 2010 marked the beginning of his marriage to Kudzai Makoto, which lasted until 2020, when he passed away. Ginger Baker and his daughter Nettie Baker both contributed to the writing of his autobiography, which was published in 2009 under the title Hellraiser. Both of them were involved in the publishing process. The process of writing was something that both of them participated in. Hellraiser is the title of the autobiography written by the most talented drummer in the world, and it is published under the same name. Nettie, who is also a writer in her own right, has authored 2 novels, Tales of a Rockstar's Daughter 2018 and More Tales of a Rockstar's Daughter 2019, in which she recalls her experiences growing up with her famous father. Both of these books were published in 2018. This year saw the publication of both of these works. The publishing of both of these novels took place in the year in question. From the time he was a jazz drummer in London in the 1960s until the present day, Ginger has been struggling with heroin addiction throughout his whole life. This struggle began when he was in London, and it has continued right up until the current day. Over the course of his whole life, he has been relentlessly battling against this addiction. In 1981, after around 29 unsuccessful efforts to quit, he eventually succeeded in doing so, and he relocated to a tiny town in Italy and began cultivating olives. Based on his calculations, it appears that he had made around 29 attempts to quit smoking. Ginger revealed in February 2013 that he suffers from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, persistent back ache owing to degenerative osteoarthritis, and COPD as a result of years of heavy smoking. He also stated that he has made this statement: all of these issues may be traced back to Ginger's smoking habits, which were the primary source of such issues. In February of 2016, he underwent open heart surgery, which proved to be an effective treatment in order to address serious cardiac issues. In the course of the surgery, there were no difficulties encountered. On October 6, 2019, Ginger, who had reached the age of 80 at the time of her departure, passed away at a hospital in Canterbury as a result of complications related to COPD. Ginger's death occurred as a consequence of these complications. The funeral service was held in Canterbury, Kent, on October 23, 2019, and was attended by members of the deceased person's immediate family, as well as close friends of the deceased person. The event was performed in private. Ginger Baker's legacy is one of brilliance and complexity. He was a man who lived life on his own terms, leaving an indelible mark on the world of music. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and death of Ginger Baker. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more stories of the legends who shaped music history. Until next time, keep rocking.